Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
Hey, I met you. You are not cool.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
Stick around.
Visit us at IHateCritics.net. We're also on Facebook. Our Twitter and Instagram handles are CriticsPod. There you can participate in our top fives, watch the trailers, read Sean's reviews, interact with us and each other. And we'll share news and other stuff there as well. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, that's where you can hear us and all the other podcatchers. I'm working on getting us on a couple other things, so we'll see how that goes. And videos around the corner. We're trying to lose a little weight. We'll get there.
We are? Crap.
I mean, you don't have to.
No, but I want to, but things are delicious. What am I supposed to do? Exercise?
No, you gotta not eat the delicious things. You can exercise all you want.
Crap. Yeah. I do have an exercise bike now, but, you know, I go like 20 minutes and then I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't like exercising. Whoops.
That's a cool thing about a bike, though. You just put it in front of the TV and watch Reds.
That's what I was doing. But I got about 25 minutes into it, and I'm like, my legs are sore and my mind hurts. So I didn't know which one to choose. Anyways.
So, yeah, there's whatever we were talking about there. Oh, yeah, Patreon. IHateCritics.net/Patreon. That's the best way to support the podcast. I mentioned video. I keep moving the studio around every week, almost to the point where we'll be ready for video. We're talking more about the book. It's been the first time we've been bringing that back up 2 weeks in a row now. So that's starting to move forward. And, you know, trying to get on another podcast hosting platform will help us out as well. There's a lot of things in the pipeline. And if you can support us, IHateCritics.net/Patreon is the best way to do that. I'm sorry if I'm saying that too fast. What do we got? Oh, yeah. iTunes, subscribe, rate and review the show. We'll read the review on the air. News this week. The Oscars obviously happened. But before we get there, according to Twitter, Robert Downey Jr. talked Disney into releasing Avengers a week early. How crazy is that?
That's quite a stunt. When did they move it to?
April 27th. And it came with a new poster and everything. So assemble April 27th in the A's and the Avengers font. No.
And what's the real reason why they moved it?
Well, probably to distance themselves a little bit from the additional things coming out in May. Instead of having 2 weekends to completely dominate, they have potentially 3 weekends now to potentially dominate before Deadpool arrives, and then 4 before like Solo arrives,
Yeah,
stuff like that.
They're releasing Solo too, so now they're spreading themselves out.
Yeah.
And yeah, Deadpool may or may not beat it after 3 weeks, but Solo is really the one I think they're spreading it out so they can just dominate the whole year. And then Amy Schumer then moved I Feel Pretty up a week. I don't know how that... I thought it was a joke at first.
It wasn't a joke? She seriously moved it? Or?
Apparently. I don't know why she would... I don't know. I thought it was a good counter-programming to Avengers. I'm going to go see both. And I actually want to see I Feel Pretty.
As do I.
I want to see Avengers. I've just got through all of them so far. I just got to finish it now, and then finish it for me and be done. Don't care about anything else that comes up.
But there's another one that's like tied into this one. There's an Avengers 4. You know, that they can't even say the title of because it's a spoiler. So you have to finish that before you're done. Stay with us, Bob. One more.
They better kill one of them off. And by one of them, I mean Captain or Iron.
I think
like
the odds are like very high. I would
like
be willing to literally
not the
bet.
next one.
No, I'm with you. And then I was going over the fact that this week they released Avengers Infinity War Lego sets and merchandise and things like that, except for the things that I wanted, of course. But they have of all of the Avengers, okay, and then the side characters, say from Black Panther, the ones that we were just introduced to a few weeks ago, some of them even make it into the Lego sets. You know who doesn't, though, out of all of the Avengers? Hawkeye. That is one dead character, man. I'm talking the first 15 minutes of the movie. I'll guarantee it.
But that's what pisses me off is he could have been a dead character in Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
He could have been a dead character in any one of these movies. He's been pretty much a dead character the whole time. So why not, you want to kill off an original guy, go for it. He's the guy to do it to. That's not enough for me. It's got to be one of the big two in this one, not the next one.
This is a pretty rough move for I Feel Pretty. Not that Amy Schumer can't pull it off, but she's now going to battle second week of Overboard, which will take a piece of her audience, and she'll be up against Super Troopers 2, which I don't expect to do well, but it's also a comedy, and it's going up against this. That's going to eat into her a little bit, and she's going up against Tully with Shirley's Theron, which also just those little niches that are just going to chip away at what I Feel Pretty. I Feel Pretty probably has a wider audience, but those little chips away that are going to keep it from maybe being as successful as it might have been a week later, up against Bad Samaritan and Traffic, which now Infinity War will crush.
I do think that Amy Schumer moving up hurts those movies more than it hurts her, but you're right. I think it's probably better off where it was as counter-programming to Avengers, but what do I know? Maybe that Tina Fey, Amy Poehler movie didn't do as well as we thought.
Sisters.
I liked it.
Yeah.
And then the Oscars happened, and it was pretty. I think Sean nailed all the ones we talked about. Maybe Josh, too. I don't remember. It was pretty obvious all the way through.
I think I guessed every category right. The ones we talked about.
Ones.
Yeah.
And
I didn't pick the Dunkirk ones correct. The technical awards for Dunkirk. Those are the ones I thought would go to Baby Driver.
Yeah. Yeah, my son can sense my irritation with it. He started calling it Dunkirk.
But you like Dunkirk more than Interstellar, right?
Yeah, but neither one of them are Oscar contenders, in my opinion.
Yes, but so you're not as irritated with Dunkirk as you are with Interstellar. Oh, okay.
No, I mean, Dunkirk does not belong among... It was
of course not.
It was not... It didn't deserve... I mean, give them The Shape of Water and then split the real awards between Get Out, Lady Bird, and Three Billboards, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's... Yeah, I don't know.
I was pleased to see that Roger Deakins won an Oscar. I didn't watch any of it. First of all, I can't get the broadcast in my place. I mean, so that was impossible. So I'm sitting there just... Well,
I thought about it.
We didn't do this at all, which is like the first time in our show's history that we haven't...
I thought about inviting you over, but I felt because I made you come over the night before and do a really bad trivia night.
No, that was fun. That's okay. I sat all by myself in my place and had to load the internet constantly and get the winners. It's fine, Bob.
It was the funniest Oscars ever, too.
Oh, was it really? Oh, okay.
I mean, it was... I thought it was tastefully done, but a lot of tightrope walking, I guess. Very PC, but not in an annoying way, but I don't know. Frances McDormand's speech was pretty awesome, It was almost like she was a pro wrestler, like she looked really, really nervous, and then she stopped and goes, "But I got some shit to say," or something like that. And just totally turned it on, and it was pretty, and she had some really cool stuff to say, and got all the women in the crowd to stand up, and it was just for me, who gets annoyed. Being a liberal who gets annoyed by liberal PC stuff, I didn't get annoyed once throughout the whole broadcast.
People were wondering, too, what an inclusion writer is. She closed her speech by talking about an inclusion writer. That is one where she's talking to all actors about making it part of their contract that a certain number of people of color or women are included in the crew and the cast of the movie. And it's also what happened a few weeks ago we talked about an actress who had it in her contract that Octavia Spencer, she was working with her, got a pay raise because she was in the movie with her, and it was part of their contract, and that's part of an inclusion rider. So that's what Frances McDormand was talking about at the end of her speech.
Yeah, some of the comedic highlights, for me, my favorite was Jennifer Lawrence and Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster came out in crutches, and Jennifer Lawrence says, "What happened to you?" And she goes, "Streep." And then Jennifer Lawrence goes, "I know, right? She tripped me once." My wife's like, "I don't get it." Like, she fell at the Oscars.
There was a a bit that Jimmy Kimmel did. There's always that one awkward moment at every Oscars where somebody tries to do crowd participation, and he took a group of people across the street from the Oscars to a movie theater across the street, and they interrupted a showing of A Wrinkle in Time to deliver like food and candy, and they had Luke Skywalker there, and Lupita Nyong'o went over, and all those people went over there. BB-8, I think, went with them. Like they had a whole bunch of people go over there, and the only thing I can think of as interesting as a bit as it was, and a great way of celebrating movies, I kept thinking if I were watching in the middle of A Wrinkle in Time and some asshole walked in, I don't care who they are, I'm watching a damn movie.
No,
I'm only partially with you.
I'm not
partially. There's a little part of me that would be annoyed, but with Wonder Woman and Luke Skywalker come in, I'm on board.
I'm like, don't do it in the middle of the movie.
And that's just two of them. It was Armie Hammer, Guillermo del Toro. It was like 15 actors, like big name people walking into the theater giving you hot dogs and popcorn.
Awkward, though.
I don't know, though, man. I was so nervous to meet Mark Hamill that I didn't buy a ticket to get his autograph and meet him. That's how nervous I was. So.
It was so awkward, though. That's what I thought. Like, they're like, just let me watch my movie.
I don't know. I thought they captured the excitement of the crowd pretty well. I mean, it was a clusterfuck for sure because people kept running in front of the cameras and they had a hard time filming it. But it seemed pretty authentic, and I don't know. And then they had a audience member announce the next person to come out and totally butchered somebody's name. I don't remember who it was, but it was pretty great.
I did hear that this was the lowest rated Oscars, perhaps of all time, if not the lowest since Jon Stewart hosted in 2008. Maybe it's because there wasn't like a single film that is super, super popular that everyone could get behind, like Titanic, for example. There's just a bunch of films that, in theory, that would bring more people in, but
I mean, I think Call Me By Your Name was one of the lowest grossing Best Picture nominees in a long time. They mentioned something like that.
Part of that, though, is a botched release schedule. I mean, they never put it out. This is the only Academy Award Best Picture nominee that did not go out wide anywhere.
But it's also not a mass audience movie, although
regardless, though, you could still. I mean, if you're a Best Picture nominee, people are going to go if they can find it. But they didn't put it out wide. It never came to any theaters in this area. And I don't know if that's just cynical Hollywood bullshit about, well, the Midwest doesn't care about gays or something like that. I don't know. I don't want to say that. I don't want to accuse the movie studios of that. But it's hard not to think that when you've got a movie that was nominated for Best fucking Picture and it doesn't get a wide release. That to me just screams of assumed homophobia.
possibly. I know that like there was a series that came around Regal the past month or so. It was the Best Picture nominee series, and you could go see it as part of that. But it was kind of like going to a specific time during the week. One show, yeah. So it's definitely not enough for a movie that good. I wish that it had gotten more attention. Then again, I would like to have a comparison to really arrive at some kind of conclusion like that. I don't have one because I'm not bright.
It's unfair to say it's unfair to the movie to point it to talk about that though, because it's not their fault. The movie makers didn't do this. It was the studio that was putting this movie out didn't even try to get an audience for it. They had a Best Picture nominee, and they didn't even try to get a nomination for it. It's a best screenplay winner, adapted screenplay winner, and they didn't even try to put it out wide.
Sony.
Yeah, and I wonder if the buried Disaster Artist didn't give it anything because of the stuff Franco got into right towards the end. And I wonder if any of that had anything to do with people not wanting to watch it as well, because they knew it was going to be brought up at some point, and it was. So I don't know. Just you have that half. I'm doing what Sean just accused the studios of doing, but at least then it's on TV, and if it's lowest rated, people didn't watch it for some reason, and that would be my guess, but I don't really know.
I think lack of a blockbuster made a difference. Usually, there's not that there's a blockbuster every year, but usually there's some overarching storyline going in, and there was no storyline for this year. There just wasn't. Get Out is probably the biggest movie that was nominated, and it came out last February. It was well out of theaters. It's already well into its home video run. So there wasn't really a clamoring for, if Get Out came out in November and it was building all this time to here, then you'd probably have an argument to say that movie was going to draw people to the awards. But it came out last February, and not that anybody forgot about it, but it just wasn't Get Out stopped being top of mind a long time ago.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you had almost the inclusion that they had, because there was a lot of minorities, a lot of female nominees, maybe to the point where there were so many stories that not one stood out. When you look at Best Screenplay, you had a great story no matter who won that award, between Jordan Peele, Kamal Nanjiani, or Greta Gerwig. Best Director, Guillermo del Toro is a good story. He's been around a long time. Greta Gerwig would have been a great story. Nolan would not have been, but I don't know. There's a lot going on, and I'm just talking about for ratings purposes. It's just there was nothing really to follow other than just kind of everything. I don't know. Sounds like we're all done with that. All right,
because I didn't watch it. It was actually kind of a relief, a little bit, to not have to.
I was kind of glad we didn't do what we normally do. One, because I'm just tired, but two, I'm kind of annoyed at award shows, and I don't. Even though Oscar is kind of the most revered one, it's still Dunkirk won a bunch of shitty awards that it didn't deserve to win. And I mean, great. Okay, the technical awards, it was an okay movie technical-wise, but I thought Baby Driver looked better. I thought Shape of Water should have won all of them.
I don't know. Blade Runner's cinematography,
Blade Runner, and
the production design for Blade Runner
I agree.
Didn't win, and I wish it would have. If you watch some of the special features on that Blu-ray, and you can see what they had to do to make that, and then
I agree completely. All three of those movies, Dunkirk doesn't hold a candle to.
No, it doesn't. Sound editing too. I was thinking to myself, Blade Runner blew me out of the theater in like the best possible way, and Dunkirk, it was like an assault on my senses, which in the not good way. So
blew you in the theater against your will.
Yeah.
The thing about Blade Runner is that Hollywood hates what they perceive as failure, and Blade Runner is perceived as a failure because of its box office. So Blade Runner getting the nominations that it got was a nod from the technical people, and Roger Deakins winning isn't necessarily about Blade Runner. It was about Roger Deakins and his long-standing career that he's never won an Oscar. This was a cumulative Oscar by their measure, because again, Hollywood doesn't like to reward failure, because they see Blade Runner as a failure. That's why Blade Runner doesn't get a Best Picture nomination that it deserved. That's why it didn't get a Best Screenplay nomination that it deserved.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the movies this week, unless you guys got anything else. Kind of got two classics. I'm just going to say we do because we all watched them, so why not? Mute.
I forgot to watch this one.
All right, let's screw Mute then. We'll bring that. Mute next week with Moon is a classic. How about that?
Very possible. Could be. Could do dual things.
Moon is free on Netflix.
Netflix, yeah. I was injured over the weekend, so I didn't get to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do.
It sucks.
I was going to say, piece of garbage. Like, one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
My brother liked it. He hated the ending. So I don't know what that means. All right, Mute is not on the show. Let's start with Death Wish. Why not?
All right, Death Wish with Bruce Willis in the role of Dr. Paul Kersey. Not an architect this time, he's a doctor.
What?
What?
No, he's not.
He is.
Bruce Willis is not. Okay, go on.
And that's where your reaction is great, because I think that's where Sean and I are going to disagree on his acting performance here. Because I'm just going to jump ahead. Sean's going to say Bruce wasn't trying, and I'm going to say he was trying to be a doctor. And I think that's what we're going to disagree on. But
Sorry, that was a visceral reaction to you saying Bruce Willis was a doctor. Oh, whew. I'm better now. Go on.
The story goes, his wife is murdered. His daughter is harmed badly. They hint at rape, but we don't really see any of that. He decides that he's going to go out for bloody revenge, And he basically does that. I was expecting this movie to be, because it's an Eli Roth movie, transgressive, offensive. I thought it was going to be ugly. I was expecting all these things. And the thing I didn't expect is for it to be so damn boring. He's not even trying. There's no effort put into this whatsoever to either offend you or to entertain you. There's just nothing there. It's a completely empty vessel of a movie. It's fine. In terms of just being a movie, it's put together properly. It plays like a pretty typical action movie as opposed to a really good revenge movie. There's not much gore. There's not much for bloody revenge in this movie. And really, I'm just disappointed that I wasn't offended. I would have preferred to be offended by this movie instead of just being there. Like, is something gonna happen in this fucking movie that's interesting? And nothing arrives because Bruce Willis does not care. He's not giving anything in this movie. This is one of those things where he's picking up his paycheck and going home at the end of the day. He does not give a fuck, and he's just bored stiff by this movie.
And I disagree. I think he's trying really hard to play a doctor. He is not the typical Bruce Willis, and when you hear directors, specifically Kevin Smith was one of them, but there's been others, not just him, that when Bruce Willis does these side non-John McClane movies or non-M. Night Shyamalan movies, he just shows up for a paycheck and he will not do another scene once you tell him you go, cut, do it again. Nope, we got it. And you hear these stories. Eli Roth was telling these stories, but he was getting Bruce Willis to redo stuff. A lot of the times, the thing was Bruce looked too cool because he's Bruce Willis. He's supposed to be a guy who's never fired a gun before. And so, I don't know. Part of me thinks it's intentional, and it worked for me. That said, let me preface this, because I'm not going to say this is a great movie by any means. This is a solid Netflix action movie, and I wasn't bored. It's a nice hour and 40 minutes. You got a 55-year-old Elizabeth Shue playing a 42-year-old mom, which means Bruce Willis must have been playing 45. That was kind of humorous. I found it fun. It's definitely not offensive. He does not glorify either end of it. He's got that moment where there's a copycat guy doing the same thing where he dies. He doesn't take a stance, which I think probably bothers Sean. I liked it because he showed both sides of the argument, and they had granted, you had Mancow and Sway, or how's his name?
Sway, yeah.
Those are the two guys, that you see on the radio debating it separately. And not that Sway's fine. I don't really know much about him other than he was on MTV once. But Mancow is not a guy that I really give two shits about. But I enjoyed the fact that he just kind of showed both sides and why it wouldn't work. Why you just can't go out and start killing people, even though all he killed was bad guys, But it's just he put a cape on him and everybody loves it, though. I'm not kidding. Somehow it's different, but
I don't really have much else to say about this movie. There's just I expected so much more.
There's only one halfway gory scene where a head falls down and kind of gets hit, turns into a watermelon or something like that. But that's kind of it. Even the rapey stuff is very just between two bad guys having a conversation. Don't do that. We said no game. Stop. It's like he just starts that. He doesn't even do it, which. Good for Eli Roth for not putting that in his movie. I'm all for that because it didn't need it. Especially when he knew what he was making. He was making a Bruce Willis Netflix action movie, and that's what this is. I don't know. It's nothing more, nothing less.
How does that interest him, though? If nothing else, what I can say about the things of his that I've seen, they're bad, but they are of a specific style that tells me that he was making the film that he wanted to make. And that's nothing like what you're saying, a Bruce Willis Netflix movie. Who cares if you're Eli Roth about making a Bruce Willis Netflix movie?
Well, and his next movie is a Jack Black, Kate Blanchett movie. I don't know. I like Cabin Fever for the indie feel to it, and I know we kind of watch it. And when you watch it today, you know Eli Roth is a household name. You don't know he only had like $100,000 to make that movie, so it's hard to watch that movie in context. Hostel, I guess Hostel would be considered as a good movie. I'm not really a fan of it. But that's the one people go to. Knock Knock might be the worst movie ever made, next to 15, 17, or whatever the pair is.
That brings me to a point. What is it that Eli Roth does to actors where he's basically directing them to give the most boring performance that they can possibly give, the most flat, affectless performances that they can give? Look at Keanu Reeves in Knock Knock. You can go back to the Hostel guys, even Cabin Fever. I mean, a couple of girls are overacting, but other than that, everybody else is pretty flat and boring. I don't understand that. I don't understand that approach as a director. Why are you not asking anything of your actors to do some actual acting?
I will say I think this was the best acting of all his movies. That's not saying a whole lot, but I think a lot of it has to do with money. He's always been an indie guy getting his own money to make the movies, and when you do that, you're going to get flat performances because you only do so many takes. That's my guess. You look at Clerks 2, Kevin Smith has had that problem too. Zach and Miri, I love it, but it's not Seth Rogen's best performance in the world. Lack of money kind of does that sometimes. So I don't know. We'll see if he makes Cate Blanchett bad, we'll know. I'm just curious. I mean, Cabin Fever has this following, then Hostel, but then after that, it's like nobody liked Green Inferno. I mean, Chris Hardwick might have, but Harry Knowles, maybe. But those guys like everything. How does he keep... I don't know. Is it Tarantino just carrying him along? Or
Yeah. It's kind of like his version of Rob Schneider.
Ooh.
Tarantino Sandler, he's Rob Schneider.
What I want... You don't understand how bad I want an Eli Roth, Adam Sandler movie that Sean has to see. I want to... Right now, hold on. If Eli Roth and Adam Sandler do a Netflix movie, you gotta see it for the podcast.
You just said that he did a Netflix Bruce Willis movie that went into theaters, so he's edging that direction.
Right. Just the Netflix part, they have nothing to do with it. Just, it's kind of the movie your dad would be like, oh, Bruce Willis action, I want to watch this. Oh, he's in Death Wish? This will be, It's made for that audience. It satisfies that audience. Every bad review I read said that. I think Sean more or less is saying that as well. So we gave this movie a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm curious to know a little bit more about what you said, though, and that they're playing both sides of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the both sides is yes, vigilante, no vigilante, or yes, protect your own with weaponry, or no, don't protect your own. I'm trying to figure out which side.
It's not saying it's a gun issue. Obviously, it's not. It has nothing to do with really vigilante. It's more of a. It's not just saying I'm pro-gun or anti-gun. It's kind of showing both sides.
Okay.
Because it's in Chicago, so I mean that's kind of that's the city that causes most anti-gun people. That's the hard one to defend because those people are going to, criminals are going to get guns no matter what.
That's an interesting angle for me, though, in that you say that it shows both sides of a particular debate without necessarily choosing one. Whereas the Elder film, which we can talk about, I think specifically straddles one particular path. And
let's play the classic music.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
All right, the old Death Wish movie. Keep going where you were going with that.
Well, I found myself thinking that I would be angry at this movie before I started to watch it, but I really wanted it to be good. I mean, I'm a fan of Dirty Harry. I'll compare the two because you've got urban decay, uber violent, early to mid 70s films starring tough guys with a gun on the poster. I mean, to me, they were within the same ballpark, so I expected something like Dirty Harry. But for all of the style and toughness of Dirty Harry that I buy out of Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson's a pussy in this movie, and I don't understand why anyone likes this movie, to be honest. He's such a pussy that he can't even face his own problems. He loses his wife his daughter is catatonic because of the assault upon her, and instead of facing that, he basically just succumbs to fear. And the film, I think, tells everyone you should succumb to fear too, because that is the only way that you can defeat the bad guy. And if you have a gun in your hand, well, that's going to take care of everything. The sly little move to put his Arizona friend in the film and somehow get through airport security, 1974 airport security, I guess that's how that happens. And then he's got himself a 32, and it's got his name on the outside of it. Ooh, that's special. Look, you can do that for yourself too. This film is abhorrent in so many ways to me, and I was about half hour in, and I mean physically ill at this movie because it's so unfair to, maybe they intended that, but it's so unfair to anyone having a different thought, that you don't have to succumb to a fear thing, that you could actually work out your demons or work out your problems by anything other than violence. And in fact, this film doesn't even bother to ask the question, is what he's doing a good thing? Is he ridding the streets of violence and then that's a good thing? Or no, it's just taking joy in knocking people off left and right. And at the end, they portray Charles Bronson is this like guy that's kind of cool, and he's sitting in his apartment collecting papers of, he's a serial killer. That's what he is. He turned himself into a serial killer. That's not a vigilante to me. I mean, we're going to go in different angles on this movie, but Death Wish is one of the most upsetting films that I think I've ever seen. Does that make it effective? I'm going to say no, because I don't think that it says anything other than a completely desperate message.
Most boring episode of Dexter I've ever seen.
See, that guy's a serial killer, and he admits it.
I was bored by this one as well. I think maybe Bruce Willis is trying to be Charles Bronson. Maybe that would explain why they're both so extraordinarily flat and dull in their performances, because they both are. Death Wish, I went into it expecting something else. I expected violence to be there throughout the movie, and instead we get to watch Charles Bronson be a fucking architect. That's what we get to fucking see.
Woo!
And boy, is that fun. Really wanted to see that trip to Arizona. That was a lot of excitement there, boy. Models and sand and hills, and you got your hills in each one of the houses. I don't care. Shoot somebody already. Just shoot somebody already. Get to it. We don't get any, the real major violence isn't until the last, 15 minutes of the movie. And even then, does he even get the guys who actually did it?
No! We don't see Goldblum again.
Bruce does.
Damn right he does. He's Bruce fucking Willis. He's also a detective and a doctor.
Well, that wasn't really Bruce Willis. That was just a fatter version of Bruce Willis playing the detective. I don't know. I feel like this movie struggles from time not being kind to it, bad sequels, a gun control debate 20, 30 years later. And I don't know, maybe it was going on then. I don't know. Watching it, I didn't feel like it was like a propaganda like it would have been if it came out today.
I think
maybe it was.
So being as young as we are, we don't necessarily remember how
Right.
it was back then. One of the reasons that Death Wish came back around in terms of the culture was in 1984, a guy named Bernie Getz fought back against a group of gang members on a New York City subway. That story, there's a lot more to that story. Bernie Getz was not a good guy. But in this instant, he was defending some people against gang members, and he ended up shooting, I think, 3 people. This was 10 years after Death Wish, but it was so reminiscent of it that the media started talking about Death Wish again, and that's how it remained as part of the culture. I think if that doesn't happen, I'm not sure Death Wish actually sticks around as a something that we continuously refer to.
Yeah, and I don't know. I didn't think it was that hard to watch, or I didn't find it that. I thought it flew by too. I wasn't really bored per se. Maybe I was keeping myself busy doing something else. I don't really remember. It just kind of
Fascinated by the architecture. Wanted to know how he built those little models.
It was the first movie I watched on this TV, and kind of looks like crap on a 4K high definition. It's like, wow, Poor Charles Bronson. I don't know. I didn't have a problem with it per se, but because I feel like what it's trying to do is similar like a movie like A Time to Kill, where they're trying to say, what would you do? And I could see people wanting to do that, that gymnastics guy, one of the dads tried to attack the guy in the court, and I get that. I don't think either one of these movies really, I think that Eli Roth does it better, to be completely honest with you, putting you in the situation and making you figure out, really what would you do. But neither one of them really capture that. I mean, A Time to Kill kind of does too. But that's really where you need to focus and really make someone believe that they would do that and not just some Republican who loves guns. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It was not difficult to watch, but I think I kept with the movie for so long because I kept expecting Charles Bronson to show charisma. I had seen him in The Magnificent Seven. He's got that screen presence that you look for in a macho dude, and he is possibly, based on my history of the thought of Charles Bronson, he's got that built up like machismo image, at least, that they used the right guy if they were going to sell us a propaganda film. But what it shows me, 1974, 34 years later, like, it's just the same message, I guess. I won't get into it anymore because then I start stumbling over my words, but it's the same thing over and over again where you just sell fear to somebody and then that all of a sudden gets them on that right track instead of actually thinking about why that occurred or thinking about anything other than the reasons why it happened. It's just, well, you should definitely eliminate all bad things because all bad things need to go away. You can only do it with a weapon. Good guy with a gun takes away a gun. And they never examine the idea of, does violence begetting violence create just more violence? And you're telling me that Death Wish, the remake, does, and that is, they at least ask the question, and this original movie doesn't even bother asking the question. That's kind of what pissed me off because the expectation was that we would see the error of his ways just by watching him be so violent. Nope, movie's not interested in that. It's interested in making him look cool.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Death Wish.
Sorry.
No, you're 100% right. The Eli Roth one does ask the question and does examine it to an extent, but just kind of like just enough, I guess, which is probably part of why it's a safe Netflix movie than really. I mean, it's kind of like the way Dark Knight examines it at the beginning. It's similar to that.
Sure. Okay.
Very quick, just enough to.
It's just enough of a cop out on both sides that neither side can be upset with it.
I disagree. I think if you make you can't have a real conversation if you can't present both sides of the story fair, and this does that, but just doesn't spend it's not the whole movie. It's just enough to, I don't know, touch the surface, I guess.
There's a better movie out about this subject that hasn't been made, or maybe it has and we haven't talked about it on the show or seen it.
The real Eli Roth movie is Red Sparrow. I watched this one first, and I'm just like, there's no way. Like, I'm not even sure. I mean, this is like stuff they were doing in Hostel and shit. I mean, they really were. And I don't know. I was just really, really shocked. I'm like, there's no way Eli Roth tops this. Red Sparrow.
Red Sparrow tells the story of Dominika. She is a ballet dancer for the Bolshoi Ballet who is intentionally injured by a fellow dancer and loses her career. So she's got a sick mom at home. She needs to find something to do. So her uncle Vanya, played by Matthias Schoenaerts, gives her a job in Russian intelligence. She's there when a Russian billionaire is murdered, and this causes her to have to go into this Sparrow School where she will learn to be a seductive spy. Essentially, sparrows are trained to be sexy and take advantage of people's weaknesses in that area. Interesting premise, at times very well put together. The opening scene set at the Bolshoi Ballet is gorgeous looking. really is. It's one of the few moments where you can kind of say, yes, Francis Lawrence is a hell of a director. For the most part, he's more of a carpenter than an auteur. That's for sure, to my knowledge, to my opinion of it. He doesn't really have a personal vision. What he's got is some boldness, some daring, a willingness to go places that most mainstream movies aren't willing to go, and that to me is really the only thing that sets Red Sparrow apart from other similar movies, is that it's a little bit more bold, a little bit more adult, a little bit more frankly sexual, and that does give it enough of an edge, enough of a difference to be better than and stand apart from other spy movies.
Yep. Francis Lawrence, I Am Legend, Constantine, Hunger Games, yes, has never super impressed me. I liked I Am Legend, but the more that you started to explain him as a guy that has a scene that really worked, it boils down to me, I Am Legend has like 2 or 3 scenes that I really like, and then the rest of the movie is, with some very poor special effects. This particular one, I was impressed that it wasn't worse, if that makes sense. It's thoroughly mediocre, yet those extra moments that are a bit more adult that you spoke of, a bit more frankly sexual, and surprisingly so, and not that I wasn't expecting Jennifer Lawrence at some point to be in a more frankly sexual film. Of course, I think all actors want to explore all sides of their personality throughout their work at some point in their career. But I was surprised to see just how far that this film wanted to ask those questions and show that on screen. And I'm not talking about specifically Jennifer Lawrence. I'm talking about the Sparrow School, for example, what they're asking people to do, and it doesn't even spend a whole lot of time there.
Yeah, just very briefly, I had a couple of flashes of Sallow while they were at Sparrow School. Like this, if you push this the wrong way, we're going towards that.
Without having seen it, I think I know exactly what you mean. But the action in this one is rather efficient. There's some brutality that works pretty well. The relationship between Jennifer Lawrence and Joel Edgerton is believable enough that I cared about both of their outcomes. Jennifer Lawrence does a good job of giving everything she can as somebody that's very conflicted. And the ending, frankly, was satisfying. It's just not one of those things I think I'm going to remember for a long time. For an early March release, before everything that I really care about shows up, okay, not bad. And I'm frankly a little pleased that this movie went a little beyond what I thought.
Yeah, I'm of 2 minds. And one, it's a pretty typical spy story, just using the art of seduction instead of just, they throw that in there. But in terms of the way the plot moves, it's pretty typical. But that boldness really distracted me from it, and I didn't know where it was going to go until it got there. And I'm like, oh, duh, So I enjoyed the ride. Enjoys might not be the best word. It's not. There's some tough things to watch in this movie. I mean, from the injury at the beginning throughout the whole movie. I mean, it is. Shit, it's more gory than Hostel is. Hostel waits till halfway through to start being gross. This one starts out at the beginning, and everything, the whole way through, there's difficult things to watch. The nude scene, unless you're going to watch it out of context, which I suppose everybody's going to do, not fun to watch in context. And it just, the whole thing just kind of had me intrigued. At the same time, the mass audience isn't going to want to sit through something this bold, and they're going to want to watch Death Wish. You know what I'm saying? They're going to want it more dumbed down and spoon-fed and simple. So it's kind of I'm glad it was more bold. Josh had been calling it the Black Widow origin story, and then I was like, no way. And Josh's like, well, if they did it right, and you're like, yeah, I guess he's right. But I don't know, it's almost too bold to be mainstream, and it's $60 million budget. I mean, it's $17 million right now. I don't know.
It'll be rough for him, that's for sure. Yeah, what the thing that occurred to me after I finished my review, I was so mad that it occurred to me after I finished the review, is that one of the things that about this movie that holds me back from loving it is that I wish it had been made by Brian De Palma. This would have been a great Brian De Palma movie. He would have gone even places where I think Francis Lawrence didn't go to. He would have pushed it even further, I think.
Yeah, different camera angles for sure. Different shots that are tracking for a long time. No Nicolas Cage. There was another thing that I wanted to talk about with this, and it has to do the guy that plays her uncle, Matthias Schoener's is his name. That dude has got to play Vladimir Putin one day. Does he not look exactly like him? For a second, I know this face, but he looks way too much like Putin and did the whole Russian thing, and now I'm just like, somebody make a biopic. When it's relevant, when he's dead and 15 years have passed, whatever.
But I mean, if I'm going to compare it to a recent movie, it's a better version of what Atomic Blonde wanted to be.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you combine these two movies, maybe you got the ideal spy movie.
That's an interesting comparison because, like, when you look at where the loyalties lie in this movie is much more clever than Atomic Blonde, which had to force its twist upon you, really shove that in there at the end where the allegiances lie.
To the point where you didn't care.
Right. This movie is very tricky as to where Jennifer Lawrence's character lies. Even right through the ending, I thought there was a part of it that, like, she still might be loyal to this side, but she's kind of loyal to this side as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know, and Joel Edgerton is always great. Got a movie next week, too. But yeah, I don't know if I would say go see it, per se, but it's for a select an audience, For us who see a lot of movies, it's something nice to be a little different to see this twist on a spy movie. For everybody else, I don't really know.
Of the probably 20, 30 people that were in the crowd at the show that I went to, I was the youngest one.
Me too.
I thought that was very strange.
Kind of uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
And not, like, I felt bad for them in a way. Like,
70 to 80 years old and sitting in the front row and whatnot, and not in the front, in the same row that I am. And I'm thinking, oh, do they know that? They know about this movie? I did have a popcorn bowl. No, the popcorn tin. Even I can't break through that.
And if you could, it wouldn't have been with that scene.
No.
Man, yeah, I don't know. Sounds like we're all saying the same thing. And then our classic is Reds.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
Yes, 1981 Best Picture winner, Reds, directed by Warren Beatty and co-starring Beatty.
It won Best Picture?
Best Picture nominee.
Yeah.
It was Warren Beatty, Diane Keaton, and I slept for half of it.
Jack Nicholson's in it, man.
He is in it. Jack Nicholson's
sleeping
in there as Eugene O'Neill. Basically, this is 3 hours of Warren Beatty and Diane Keaton yelling at each other.
3.5 hours.
3.5 hours. Again, I was asleep for an hour and a half of that, so I don't remember much other than them yelling at each other. But in my defense, I was on muscle relaxers and pain pills, so...
That's the only way to watch this.
Would you be surprised if I said I watched it twice?
Because you had to?
Here's why. I went to trivia night with Josh on Saturday, and I told him how I watched it, and I started to try to explain it to him when he's asking questions, and I realized I have no answers to the questions he's asking me. I couldn't even remember who Jack Nicholson was in the movie, so I was like, okay, I need to actually... I didn't, and again, I watched it the same way I watched it the first time. Like, turned it on. No, I'm going to do the laundry. I'm going to go do this. Who were those old people talking? Why are they in this? Why is it back to Diane Keaton? What's going on?
Yeah, you could have shaved like a good chunk of time off of this film.
2.5 hours, maybe.
Well, just at bare minimum, get rid of the old people giving interviews. Like, that had no relevance and brought up something that you told us in chat, which involved cuts. And I think you called them slam cuts.
Yeah.
And I noticed it. It's not you. It's not the drugs. It is a way that this film is edited so that you're going from these interviews in present-day 1981 or whatnot about the past and about the Bolshevik Revolution and the progressives involved in that movement, and it just goes into the next scene very quickly. And then it goes right back to these interviews, kind of like out of context in a way. You're immersed and you're starting to get interested, and then all of a sudden it slams you right back into interviews. And even in scenes that are in the past, that occasionally happened as well, to the point where it kind of took me out of it. This movie won Best Director for Warren Beatty. This is one of the worst directing Best picture nominees that I can possibly remember. Maybe just because of the fact that he got it done and had an ambitious project, and so they rewarded him for that. But this is a shittily directed film.
It's really, really fat. I mean, that's I always like to go to Wikipedia and read the plot with the classics. Not always, but for the most part, just so I'm kind of making sure I'm not missing anything. This had one of the shortest plot summaries I've ever read on a 3.5-hour movie. I've seen short movies that have really long plot because a lot's happening. Enough's not happening here to warrant. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I guess I'm glad I can check it off the list of movies I haven't seen. But
yeah, I had known a little bit about this film because my fiance plays the ukulele a little bit, and she had played a particular song for me and had showed me a clip of Diane Keaton singing that song, and then she played it and sang it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. All of a sudden I hear it, and I'm like, this is that movie? Oh, wait. So, yes, Diane Keaton has a little song that she sings, and the song kind of plays throughout a good chunk of the film or whatnot.
Go ahead.
No, I was done, actually.
Okay. This is my experience of the movie through the drug haze was argue, let's get married. Argue. She goes in another room and they're going to break up. Argue. They're going to break up again. Then they move to Russia.
Don't forget the intermission in there.
Okay.
the Casino does all that much better.
I see exactly what you mean, even though I haven't seen that movie.
Other than the Russia part, Casino does the part. He keeps taking her back for something.
And plus, I don't. There's something that's the bare bones of this idea where you're exploring the origins and whatnot of the Communist Party and Lenin and the Bolsheviks and how that might have turned out differently. But I started to get this idea in my head as somebody that enjoys the idea at its heart of communism. I'm just saying I'm not a communist. I'm just saying I like some of the ideas of it, of benefiting everyone equally, okay? Then you start to listen to these people, and it's like liberal masturbation all over the place. They can't... Their ideas are way better than the other person's ideas, and then so it's one big circle jerk of ideas. And this film either wanted to show us that, or Warren Beatty has no idea who in the world he is as a political idealist, because I can envision him like that's who he is. He was playing himself in this movie, it seemed, and it just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, oh, maybe I'm not that left wing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think if among the things we always have something that we kind of come away with in this podcast when we look back on stuff like this. And one of the weird revelations I've had via this show is that I don't like Warren Beatty at all. Like, I don't find him. I don't find him charismatic. I don't find him interesting. I don't. Remember we watched Shampoo and how incredibly disappointing that was. I don't get what it is that people love about Warren Beatty.
He's pretty. I wouldn't throw him out of bed.
Yeah, he Bruce Campbell was going to make a TV show about Dick Tracy, and Warren Beatty shut it down.
Yeah.
Horrible. Bruce Campbell been a perfect Dick Tracy. Well, against Josh's will, but nonetheless.
Yeah, as long as Sam Raimi didn't direct any episodes, we're fine.
Sam Raimi's an artist. But that is something. He's an auteur. He's not a carpenter. But along those lines, the reason I get into like the Kevin Smith movies, and even the way I defend Eli Roth at times and Rob Zombie and these people who kind of do stuff on their own dime or very little money, is you have to be more creative and you have to try to do something within a budget. And then I'm more willing to put up with the acting. This is just throwing money at shit, and it's just bloated. And it, to your point about the liberal masturbation, and then you're throwing money in there too. It's a big turnoff for me. And I don't like movies like this. The Greatest Showman, or not that
Greatest Show on Earth.
Yeah, that one was kind of similar.
Oh man,
to me, that's not real art. I'm rich and I can I'm just going to do it until I'm done.
This movie celebrates the relationship between Jack Reed and Louise Reed, I think was her name, Louise Bryant, before Reed. And that is supposed to be the relationship that all of these present-day elderly folk are talking about and reminiscing over because they were such interesting people. What did they do? I mean, the interesting thing, the movie that I want to see is Eugene O'Neill and Louise Bryant. That was the best part of the movie. That all of a sudden she met this guy who actually let her be herself and brought out her better talents, and she felt loved. Oh, that's a movie, but I don't care about these people that eventually they did nothing. Is that the tragedy of the movie? That they accomplished nothing for something that got nowhere and is still going nowhere? It means that all of this 3 hours and 15 minutes of bloat means jack shit, because the most interesting part didn't even involve the thing that the film is about. Whoops.
Yeah, Nicholson definitely blows Warren Beatty off the screen.
Oh my God, yes.
No question about that.
I missed that part.
Blows him off the screen.
Oh, that's why I missed it. It was awful.
Oh, it took me a minute. Oh, that was an old boy moment.
Speaking of old boy, I forgot to do our top 5.
Yes.
Put your top 5. Who's your top 5?
All right, our top 5 because of Death Wish is Vigilantes. I do believe we have an Instagram one.
Yeah, and then it's Steve, and I am not able to pull
I
it
will
up.
work on pulling that up while I'm talking here. And I'll head over to Facebook as well. And normally have all the stuff ready to go. We will start with Matt Holmes. He has number 5, The Shadow. Number 4, Batman from Batman Begins. 3, I don't watch Game of Thrones, so Arya Stark. Arya Stark.
Oh, yeah, it is Arya. Man, it's been too long.
Richard Harrow from Boardwalk Empire. And then Rorschach from The Watchmen. Jason from New Mexico has Dr. Phibbs? I don't know. Number 4, William Foster from Falling Down. I should have had that. That was a good one. 3, Hit Girl. 2, The Bride. 1, Batman. Cousin Jeff. He has Jodie Foster from The Brave One. Sally Field, Eye for an Eye. Chloe Grace Moretz, Kick-Ass. Pam Grier, Coffee. Uma Thurman, Kill Bill. And then Good Steve on Instagram gave us 10 because fuck you guys, basically. He said, rubbling like all good vigilantes, here are my top 10. Ben Affleck is Bartleby in Dogma. Ben Affleck in The Accountant. Ben Affleck is Daredevil. Ben Affleck is Batman in Batman vs. Superman. Thomas Jane is The Punisher. 5 of the Boondock Saints. Boo. Michael Caine is Harry Brown. 3, Denzel and Equalizer. 2, Mark Wahlberg and Company and 4 Brothers. Number 1, Keanu as John Wick. Oh, and 1.5 would be Rainn Wilson and Super. I had number 5, Paul Kersey, because I didn't mind. I don't know, it was fresh in my mind, and I wanted to put it on there, so fuck you for judging me.
Well, which one, though? Bronson or Willis? It seems like it might make a difference.
Willis.
Oh, okay, cool.
Pam Grier, Foxy Brown, The Bride, Travis Bickle, O'Day Sue, number 1 from Old Boy. Josh, do you have yours or need me to read it?
I'll need you to read it.
Josh has Harry Brown from Harry Brown, Foxy Brown from Foxy Brown, John Creasy from Man on Fire.
I ran out of Browns.
And you went to a bad movie, too. Number 2, The Bride, Kill Bill, and number 1, Batman, with honorable mentions Travis Bickle, I guess.
Well, yeah, he doesn't really fit my definition.
I know, I'm just kidding. Sean, you have yours?
Yeah, my number 5 is Batman. Number 4, Pam Grier from Foxy Brown. Number 3 is Travis Bickle. Number 2, The Bride. And number 1, Old Boy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. In hindsight, I'd probably put the dude from Falling Down in. maybe I need to rewatch it, but I remember at the time thinking that was fun to watch.
Defend.
It's an effective film, but it's also a Joe Schumacher film.
On occasion, he does okay.
Yeah.
It's the second Joel Schumacher movie we've mentioned on this podcast today. Time to Kill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Number 18 in 1988. Squeezed and pulled and hurt my neck in 1988.
Squeezed and pulled and hurt your neck in 1988.
1988.
Okay. Plot summaries are something that I cannot give you for 3 of these films, but I can tell you their names, and I didn't watch any of them. The House on Carroll Street.
Okay.
Pass the Ammo. Not a Death Wish sequel or
With Bill
derivative.
Paxton.
Oh, is it really?
I believe so. It's a satire, apparently.
Okay, interesting. A movie called Prison, which I don't know what that's about either. I would imagine it involves law enforcement in jail.
Who, Rennie Harlan directed it.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is not his first American film, because we talked about his first one a couple years ago, and it was this like crazy medieval action film or whatnot. And yeah, and he goes on to direct Die Hard 2 a couple of years later. Yeah, I guess he earned it by maybe doing Prison. And Switching Channels is the one that I did see, and we can talk about this one. It stars Kathleen Turner and Burt Reynolds and Christopher Reeve. It's a remake of His Girl Friday set in the cable broadcasting days of 1988. Or at least it's still technically in its infancy at that point, I suppose. Kathleen Turner is the reporter, the hard-edged reporter that gets her story, and Burt Reynolds is the news manager at this station, SNN. Get it? Satellite News Network. And he's her ex-husband, though. Christopher Reeve is somebody that Kathleen Turner meets while on vacation, and she's enraptured by him because he's Superman, I guess. And he's got blonde hair, though, this time. And he's well-built, he's well-mannered, he's very rich, and so she's taken by him. But by being on vacation, she's not getting back to the thing that she loves the most. And Burt Reynolds' job is to come up with sort of a comedy of errors to keep Kathleen Turner in his space so that he can get her to realize that what she's best at is, number 1, loving him, number 2, doing the news. And there's a plot involving somebody that's on death row that she may or may not be able to help get off of death row. This is a very fast-paced film in the vein of, I haven't seen His Girl Friday, and we may get to that real soon here. The point is that I envision that it captures that energy and spirit like other journalism movies do. Now, I like this. I think it's a very watchable film, especially when you consider the worst of all 3 of these actors and the best of all 3 of them. This is all 3 of them like doing really well, and it works for me as an entire film. Do I think it's better than the original? Probably not, but at the same time, I found myself enjoying almost every minute of this.
Yeah, I couldn't possibly touch the original, or not the original, but the second one, which was the first one was the front page back in the mid to late 30s, and then His Girl Friday came right on that one's heels. But this is a really fun movie. It's really a lot of fun, and everybody's having a lot of fun. And it's a farce, really, when you get down to it, especially at the end. Artie Johnson is the guy they're trying to save as the guy on death row, and they know he's innocent. They're trying to get the governor to pardon him, and they're running around, hiding him in various different places. And it's a wonderful bit of farce that by 1988, you weren't sure that the movies could still be made like that. And I loved that they really pulled it off.
Yeah, and Ned Beatty is really great as a really icky lawyer that's running for governor and constantly trying to move up the execution of this man. As a guy that's red-faced and blustery. Ned Beatty there's no better than him. And I found it interesting. George Newbern plays the intern for Burt Reynolds' news station, and Burt Reynolds keeps sending him on all these ridiculous tasks, like buy all the tickets in the airport, buy all the train tickets too. And George Newbern goes on at some point in his career to voice Superman and the animated DC stuff that I really love. And then you've got Superman on the other side of the screen too, and I found that a nice little corollary. Just me. Anyways, it's a really solid film. Of the 88 ones we've watched so far, this one might be my favorite.
Anything else?
No. Oh, we skipped James Woods movie that came out this week.
Who? Like that person doesn't exist.
He's
Out
a
of this show.
very
Don't know
low-key
who he is.
actor.
Don't know
He was
who
out
it
of the
is.
business relatively shortly after this.
It's funny you mentioned him. Sharon Stone was on Mark Maron's podcast. Really fantastic interview, actually. But he asked how, because she's friends with James Wood, he goes, how do you guys, when it comes to political debates, how do you guys talk to each other? It's like, we just don't talk about it. But I don't know. She brought a good perspective on what's going on and the Me Too movement and all that stuff. So I thought it was really interesting. But that's our show for this week. Next week, we've got Gringo, The Hurricane Heist, Strangers 2, and A Wrinkle in Time. And is it weird that when I want to see Lisa's A Wrinkle in Time?
That is a little weird, yeah.
I just don't really care. I'm sure it's good, but it's not my type of movie.
If it wasn't Ava DuVernay behind the camera, then I might agree with you.
I'm not saying it'll be bad, it's just not for me.
The trailers haven't gotten me all that interested, but having a son that just finished the book and somebody else in my life that's like one of her favorite books, I'm kind of drawn to the material just based off of what I'm hearing in one ear, not out of both ears, because I can't hear out of that one. Yeah,
I have, after the last year or so, I have complete faith in whatever Chris Pine wants to do. If he's doing it, it's got to be good, so I'm excited.
Yeah, so our classic is... Are we going to do His Girl Friday? And then if we want to do Mute and Moon 2, it's up to you guys. Or we can totally skip Mute if you want, 'cause it's bad.
All I'm going to do is bash it. And if that takes something off of your slate this week and keeps you away from something that's video on demand anyways, feel free. But if you feel strongly about it, then we can just sit here for a minute and wax unpoetic about it.
I don't really have any more to say other than I didn't like it at all.
It's one of the worst pieces of garbage I've ever seen. Most inauthentic science fiction film of my life. And I've seen some shit on sci-fi that makes this look like like those films are Oscar contenders compared to this. And Duncan Jones made freaking Source Code and Moon.
I'm not positive I can agree with the sci-fi Academy Award level. Because, I don't know. It just, everything seems so out of place. Like, I like Paul Rudd a lot, but he's playing Paul Rudd in this weird universe, and it's just kind of odd. You know, he's playing the goofy Paul Rudd we all have seen lately, not the younger Paul Rudd we didn't know who he was.
With an edge to him. Whatever.
But you don't buy it at all. I don't know. It's just...
It's like the store brand version of Honey Nut Cheerios, right? You know it's not going to taste as good as Blade Runner. And so you go in thinking that it might be in the vein of Blade Runner. And then you're like, oh my God, I need to buy Honey Nut Cheerios. I can't have Honey Tastios. Because when you buy Honey Tastios, you get Honey Tastios.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of the better... It's more like an Asylum Films version of Blade Runner. Kind of.
Yeah, it makes me really sad for Duncan Jones. Like, what's wrong with his filmmaking ability to regress this far? And it's set in the same universe as Moon. So it's not a sequel, but there's Sam Rockwell on screen, his character from Moon, 156 times or whatever it is. And he shows up a number of times on TV screens, set in the same universe, and I couldn't care less. It's like the Phantom Menace to A New Hope.
What?
Bob doesn't understand good versus bad there is what I'm saying.
Same thing. Yeah, it's just I didn't enjoy watching it. It was a clusterfuck in a lot of ways. What if you see it and you want to talk about it, let me know.
I just quickly, before we wrap up, I'll throw a shout out to Filmstruck, the Filmstruck app. They've got a collection of Betty Davis movies, 22 different Betty Davis movies that they're showing for the next month. And I watched a movie called Hell's House, which is one of her first features from 1932. And it's a pretty smart, pretty interesting film, and one that I think a lot of people will find very interesting, especially for the very, very, very homosexual undertones of two characters, which they're very coded for 1932.
They had to be, right?
Yeah, they had to be.
It's very cool. So yeah, next week then His Girl Friday is our classic, and then our top 5 is marijuana movies. Here's why Gringo is about medical marijuana and other. It's more than that, but it's got the stupid symbol in the logo, so I don't know. It's something other than cast top 5s, which we don't have to do those. We try not to. I do want to thank our Patreon supporters before we get going. Our Key Grip, Charlie Messing. Our character actors, Christina and Josh.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Our special effects level, Corey.
May the Force be with you.
Our associate producer, Jason from New Mexico.
Everybody has to eat shaving cream once in a while.
And our movie stars, David Severs and Jeff Marshall.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
If you want to be a Patreon supporter, head over to ihatecritics.net/Patreon. Also, there's Amazon. If you go to ihatecritics.net first, click on the Amazon link. You can shop there. We get a portion of that. And then iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the show. It helps us move up the charts. We'll read your review on the air. Otherwise, stick around after the credits.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the 3 best friends that anybody could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best 3 friends that anybody can have. I mean the 3 best friends that anybody can have. That's right, the 3 best friends.
You guys able to play Flickchart, or do you got to get going?
I always say yes. However, it's no offense either way.
Rush Hour 2 or Con Air?
That's tough, because I have this really huge love for Con Air. It's entirely ironic. Like, it's a terrible film, but it's hilariously funny for how terrible it is. Especially Nicolas Cage's accent in Con Air is one of the funniest accents in history. I gotta go Con Air.
Rush Hour 2. Not close. I hate Con Air.
I'll go Rush Hour 2 just because I don't have a dog in the fight. I always tend to side with Sean. So I'm going to go with Josh. It's a Wonderful Life or Con Air?
Con Air.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes. Really,
I have more fun watching Con Air. I'm sick of It's a Wonderful Life.
Jimmy Stewart is greater than Nicolas Cage, no matter how crazy he is.
Yeah, it's not that. It's what. It's not. It's a Wonderful Life is.
It's a better movie, no questionably, but I have more fun watching Con Air.
That said, of every Jimmy Stewart movie we've watched, It's a Wonderful Life is my least favorite.
Yeah.
that I've seen that we've watched on the show.
I have it ranked in my top 50, and I don't have another one in my top 50. But like, I love Vertigo. I loved Rear Window. What's the other one where he's in an apartment the whole time? Of Hitchcock's, I can't remember that one.
Rear Window.
No,
Rope.
Right.
Rope.
Thank you.
He is. I mean, even
this is the only Jimmy Stewart movie that I wouldn't pick over Con Air.
Yeah,
I just like Con Air so much in terms of how funny it is. It is hysterical.
And it was a movie I was sick of watching as a kid, but I will take it over Con Air for sure. Braveheart or Beauty and the Beast in 1991.
Beauty and the Beast.
Braveheart.
man's movie. Come on, Sean.
One of the movies every man should see.
Oh, fuck you.
I knew it. Good. I just pushed that button.
Full Metal Jacket or Hancock?
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
Another man movie. Speaking of man movies, Above the Law or Taken?
Taken.
I have not seen Above the Law, but Taken it is.
I agree. Ooh, this will be fun for Sean. Amadeus or Good Will Hunting?
Huh. Good Will Hunting.
Agreed. Flick Chart brinking out the big guns.
Yeah, as much as Amadeus caught me off guard, I mean, I think our age has a lot to do with Good Will Hunting and the time it came out. And
yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, or V for Vendetta?
V for Vendetta.
V for Vendetta.
Flight Plan, 2005. I've never seen or heard of that.
Flight Plan?
Yes.
Jodie Foster. She's on a plane the whole time, and there's like a robber, and Sean Bean's in it, of course. Guess what he is? He's a villain.
Or Home Alone 2.
Home Alone 2, I guess.
Agreed.
You're not going to vote. South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut, Jumanji, 1995.
South Park.
Agreed.
By a mile. My daughter asked, why wasn't Jumanji nominated? Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Harry Potter, I guess.
Harry Potter by a mile.
Part 2 is awful.
But again, it has that camp appeal.
Right. But, I don't know. Even I can take Harry Potter on that one. Kill Bill Volume 2 or Daisies, 1966.
I love Daisies.
I've never seen it.
Most people have it. You can put it up against someone else if you want.
Fighting the Youth, 1935.
Never heard of it.
I haven't seen that one either. It's not fair, Josh. Kill Bill Volume 2 or Heat.
Kill Bill.
Oh, man. Heat. But if it was against Volume 1, I'd pick Volume 1.
Really?
Yeah.
I like Volume 2 better than 1.
I enjoy so much the martial arts stuff of Part 1 over the Western of Part 2.
And I'm just the polar opposite. But yeah. Man. But, you know, I've only watched Kill Bill a handful of times, and I've seen Heat a billion times. Kill Bill's a better movie, but I'm picking Heat. Sorry. American Beauty or Jurassic Park 3.
Let's see here. Jurassic Park 3.
He's going to go against American Beauty.
I hate American Beauty.
Yeah, right. I know, but you have more fun watching Jurassic Park 3?
Probably.
Okay. American Beauty.
Little Miss Sunshine or Big Daddy.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Little Mermaid or Taft in a Bathtub. Sorry, that was an inside joke from my trivia night.
And I was still wrong. Man.
Or Little Mermaid or Rear Window.
Rear Window.
Rear Window. I don't even remember what the answer to that was, but I think it was like...
The question was the only bachelor president.
Yeah, and I could have swore it was Taft. But as it turns out, no, somebody used their niece or something like that as a first lady. That's not creepy.
Monroe, was it?
It was after that. Point is, the American president has a long history of oddness.
Grindhouse, 2007, or Superman 78.
If you're going to put Grindhouse together as just one movie, I'll take Superman. That's how much I hate that Robert Rodriguez one, even though I love Death Proof.
I'll take Superman regardless.
I'd go Grindhouse.
I would take Death Proof. I would if it was just Death Proof, but the other movie drags it down.
Which I don't think we'll ever get them separate on here. All right. Looks like the internet's not wanting us to play anymore, so that's our show. Bye.